developing scripts for them and directing most of their material. It was a very small project because radio drama, as you know, disappeared after War of the Worlds, and essentially after radio was commercialized and all radio became music, and so radio drama disappeared. George Lucas, who was an alumnus of the University of Southern California and was a radio enthusiast, radio drama enthusiast, and gave the rights to a radio adaptation of Star Wars to the University of Southern California, his alma mater, which had a component radio station called KUSC for $1, I believe. And they just sat there. It was just a gesture he made at some point, not imagining anybody would ever do anything about it. And that came to our notice because we were the National Public Radio Drama Project. It was a project called Earplay. And the idea of adapting the first film for radio came up, and they approached us at Earplay, and me in particular, say, would you be interested in doing this? And I said, are you kidding? Yeah, it'd be fantastic. So we did a 13-part adaptation with, and the thing that made it unusual was that we were given access to all the original sound material from Ben Burt, who did the sound for the original film, and also the original music, which we were both able to use, both of which we were able to use in the adaptation. And because there was no production line of radio production in America, we tended to do the post-production in a very sophisticated way that would never be done, for example, in radio drama production in England, so that we mixed on multi-track in essentially a recording studio, a kind of high-end recording studio in Minneapolis, using 32-track techniques and so forth, and we mixed it like an album, so we had immense control over the layers of sound and so forth, and the time to do it. So that had a huge following, and after that, pretty much immediately, we did The Empire Strikes Back, which was a 10-part adaptation. And then some years after that, there was a hiatus there, but that's partly because Revenge of the Jedi, as it was originally called, I still have a Revenge of the Jedi t-shirt before they changed the title to Return of the Jedi, hadn't come out at that point, and then we did the final adaptation of that. So they made up a trilogy, but that's why we did it. It was really George Lucas and KUSC. The thing is it's rather a good way of bringing to people's attention what the possibilities of radio are. Why should radio not be dealing with other planets? War of the Worlds is one of the most famous radio plays there is. Wells' adaptation anyway of that. And it's all about imagination, isn't it? In this particular case, of course, you were working with a key that the audience already had, which is that they all knew what Tatooine looked like. It wouldn't have mattered if they didn't, because I think it still would have worked. And indeed, we had some of the original cast, not all of them, because Harrison Ford had gone on to a very demanding film career pretty soon after that, and we couldn't get him, for example. But we were working with some pictures that were already in the audience's mind, but a good story, which is essentially what they were, will always work on radio if you do it right. Yes, he was indeed. Well, consider myself pretty lucky to have been involved in that series, because there weren't that many things at that point that were being made on film in television. By far the majority of the drama output of television at that point was studio work, studio-based material. Nothing wrong with that, but the chance to work with film on location was not that common. It's hard to remember that now. And there was a series that was shot completely on location. The short stories, the Conan Doyle short stories, are spectacularly well suited to a 50-minute kind of format, which is essentially what it was. By the time it was made for a commercial channel and there were commercial breaks in it. which meant that you constructed the stories in a 3-act structure with 2 commercial breaks, which again suited the material incredibly well. So very well fashioned in film terms. They're also highly stylized, which as a filmmaker gave you a chance to spread your wings a little bit. You weren't dealing with naturalism. You weren't dealing with following people around. They're big leaps, spectacular moments, minute detail. So it offered a sort of spectrum of visual language and visual treatment that was unusual. And of course, the raison d'etre of the whole thing was the Jeremy Brett performance, which was madly eccentric and highly theatrical, but in a way that suited the material incredibly well. He used to see the task of realizing each one as Olympian, was the word he used to use, by way of apologizing for his sometimes eccentric behavior. And of course, at the time, he was really actually developing quite a significant bipolar kind of condition at that point, which entirely suited the part, and would, had a kind of manic capability in his performance that was tremendously energized and charged, which I think gave a level of excitement to them. And I think it's sort of classic status, and I think they totally stand up now if you look at them again. Comes partly from that. I'm doing a film now whose current title is The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, which describes an institution that is the brainchild of a young Indian entrepreneur to offer retirement opportunities to, in this case, English people of retirement age to come and live out their golden years in India. And as you might expect, when they get there, things are not quite what they imagined or understood. So it is about dropping a group of people into the maelstrom and the cultural overload that is modern India, and the most extraordinary place to witness now as its sort of economy thrusts its way forward into the future, out of what is still primarily an agricultural system. So it's an amazing place to make a film. We're only just getting that underway, but it's potentially got a marvelous cast of I suppose the cream of the English acting profession, and we hope to shoot that in October and November in India and a little bit in England when we get back.
And finally, how are you enjoying Pascal's festival?
Well, marvellous. Only arrived yesterday, and
one of the worst days to arrive with
yes,
the heat.
because it was sweltering heat. To be honest with you, since I was in India about a week ago, it felt quite normal to me. But no, fantastically beautiful place, which obviously you know much better than I, which I'm about to go and explore.